Welcome to another episode of the On the Water podcast. I'm Jimmy Fee. I've got Kevin Blinkoff here. And to start off this week's podcast, we're going to talk about fishing grand slams. So if you don't know what a fishing grand slam is, I guess it's one of those kind of, well, it definitely is. It's a made-up achievement, but if you catch multiple species in a single trip, you've caught a grand slam.
Specifically 4, right? A slam is always 4.
It can be 3. So there's different slams. We'll start with the one that's furthest away from us. So that would be in Florida, the flat slam is a tarpon, a bonefish, and a permit.
I always thought a slam is 4 because if you in tennis a slam is 4, in baseball a grand slam is 4 runs, a hat trick is 3.
Well, they don't call it a flats hat trick. They call it a flat slam. But
why not just add another fish species?
Okay,
well, I've already derailed the
no, that's
podcast.
fine. Let me just make sure.
All right, everybody, please hold while Jimmy pulls his phone out and Googles slam. This is some good dead air for the folks at home.
Did I make up that whole Florida one? Tarpon, permit, bonefish, grand slam. The International Game Fish Association defines a grand slam as catching the following species on the same day: bonefish, tarpon, permit. Catching all 3 plus a snook in the same day is referred to as a super slam.
That's crazy. Why not just call it a slam and a grand slam?
Talk the IGFA.
All right, so for the sake of today's conversation, a slam is at least 3, can be more.
Usually 4 fish. So growing up in New Jersey, fishing there, the inshore slam in New Jersey was a striped bass, a bluefish, a fluke, and a weak fish. And if you caught those all in one trip, I mean, the IGFA one sounds pretty official down in Florida, but this one up here, just kind of a cool little feather in your cap. They have them for the single trip, like those we're talking about. Then there's also lifetime slams. Like if you catch every single billfish, I think that's referred to as a royal slam. Probably because you need to be royalty to afford bill fishing all over the world, practically. They have them in hunting when it comes to all the different variations of turkey you have in North America. But the reason we're talking about grand slams is because Kevin just came back from a trip on Nantucket where he caught an inshore grand slam in the surf. Now, that's a little bit different here in New England. Kevin, what's the grand slam when it comes to, officially on Nantucket and the Martha's Vineyard Bass and Bluefish Derby? What's that grand slam?
So what we did is I caught a bluefish, a striper, an albie, and a bonito.
Now, over what span of time?
Well, it was within 24 hours, but we got to Nantucket on an afternoon ferry, and I got all 3 except for the striper, which I caught first thing the next morning.
I think I'll give it to you.
And then the next day, we were fishing with Mike Wayne, who's a Nantucket resident. He was there, obviously, in the morning, started with the striper, and ended with the bonito. I did it in the reverse direction.
So the bonito would be the hardest one. So that's something I know, talking to guys who've gotten grand slams in Florida, the tarpon, bonefish, and permit. It's the type of trip where if you get the hardest one first, if you get the permit early, then you're like, oh, we have a chance of getting a grand slam. Getting the bonito first.
I got the bonito first, and then I was like, oh, I got a bonito. And then we started saying, oh, there's a chance at a slam.
You guys were actually talking about it ahead of time?
Yes. And then the next morning, Mike started with the striper first thing in the morning, and then he got a bluefish, and then he got an albie, and he said, oh, now all I need is a bonito for the slam. But we really didn't think it could happen. He pulled it out. Last fish, end of the day, got a bonito from shore. So
that's
pretty cool.
So how were you guys, how'd you catch them all? So how did you get the bonito to start?
Throwing jigs from shore, so different epoxy jigs, metals, things like that. I was throwing some game on jigs and just casting from shore. The name of the game in Nantucket is make a lot of casts, hook up fish, and then try to get them past the seals.
Blind casting, or are you seeing fish on top?
A little of both, mostly blind casting. The fish down there, especially, we would fish on the inside because wind was out of the east. So we'd fish on the inside of Great Point, and the water was very flat and calm, and you would occasionally see just the tiniest of a splash and of fish coming through. But that was mostly blind casting. Fishing on the outside, where there were some pretty big surf, pretty big waves coming in, there you would see splashes of fish feeding, and you would also see them in the face of the wave. You'd see, very cool, in the face of a wave coming in toward the beach, see 4 or 5 albies kind of surfing down the face of the wave, feeding together.
That's really cool. And what kind of bait were they on?
Looked like it was mostly sand eels.
Okay. So you got the bonito first. It hasn't been a great bonito year.
It's been a great bonito year down on Nantucket for sure. They were talking about, especially from shore, they've been doing really well. It seems like a year where the bonito moved inshore early and have kind of stuck around. A lot of times the albies will push them out, but I've been hearing a lot of people out albie fishing around the Cape and Islands that are getting bonito mixed in. So, I mean, it was, at the same time, like, for example, I caught the bonito and then we caught a bunch of albies afterward. Yesterday we caught albies and then we caught bonito in the middle of it. So
Bonito
kind of mixed.
They're kind of a. I feel like we don't know a lot about bonito. They're the type of fish where I remember hearing more about them and guys catching them from Jersey, New York, Rhode Island, and the Cape. 15 years ago, and now it seems like it's kind of shifted where we're seeing way more albies than we used to bonito. Like bonito.
Yeah, I don't know. I've looked in. We always look at the Fishes of the Gulf of Maine book, which has records dating back to the 1800s, and they talk about Atlantic bonito as having these crazy boom years sometimes, where huge numbers, of bonito were taken in commercial net fisheries in, like, as far north as Boston Harbor and Provincetown Harbor in specific years. We've seen around here in Massachusetts, there have been in recent years small baby bonito, mackerel sized. Maybe 5 or 6 years ago, like one or two when you were mackerel fishing was an interesting occurrence. And then all of a sudden, a few years ago, there were schools of them. Folks going out and throwing small spoons and stuff at the east end of the canal and
All the way up to
getting
Maine
dozens.
that year.
Yeah, and all the way up to Maine. Some people started live lining them for stripers, which, got some people nervous. Should we really be using bonito as bait like this? But yeah, I don't think scientists have a great handle on it. A lot of the pelagic fish, albies, bonito, that can really swim anywhere, cover the ocean, it's tough to figure out how many are out there and what their populations are doing.
So bonito differ from false albacore in that's one thing where sometimes people, if you're just getting into fishing, you might confuse the two. Bonito, one of the easiest ways to tell them apart, bonito have very big teeth, and they have straight stripes as opposed to albies have more of a wavy stripe. Anecdotally, fight-wise, what would you say the difference is between the two?
Albies have a stronger fight, pull harder. Bonito fight kind of faster, so they don't have the strength and stamina to really pull drag, but when they do swim in a straight line, they can cover water incredibly fast. They also seem to really change direction. I haven't caught a ton of bonito, but often when you do catch one, they will change direction and swim back at you so fast that you're sure you've lost the fish. You pick up all the line, and all of a sudden, there it zips right past you.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and they're kind of a little more, I would say, streamlined, aerodynamic in shape, whereas false albacore get a little more of that football type shape to them, a little chunkier looking.
The albies, now the other way is the fin. Like bonito have one long fin going to their rear pectoral fin. Albies have a shorter, taller fin. Mm-hmm. So that's another way to tell the difference between the two. And also, bonito is kind of more widely accepted as good eating, while most people will say that albies are no good to eat. Bonito they're okay. They don't rank in my top 10.
Some people love them. To me, I've always, I don't know. Yeah, I don't really love them either. I've had it raw and not really enjoyed it. I've had it grilled as a steak and thought it was fantastic. So, I mean, I think if you do keep them, that was probably the best bonito I ever had. I think it was Andy who cut them up into steaks. And then you just get a lot more flavor. You get the bones in there, you grill it, you put a little sauce on there. That's how I would recommend.
So you got your bonito, and then how soon after that did you get the albie?
The albie, so I got the bonito pretty early. That was in the afternoon, and then later towards sunset, we were out on the beach side, the outer side, outer Great Point, so facing off toward Portugal, and big waves coming in, and casting directly into like a 15-mile-an-hour wind was neat. We were catching little bluefish, and I thought, we thought for sure we could see albies out there, but it seemed like all we would get was bluefish. And then I was throwing a pretty heavy, I think it's a fat cow jig, epoxy jig, had real good weight to it, and it was one of those things where I launched the cast as far as I could, and by the time I took in the slack, had a fish on, and a pretty big albie. They get some big albies down there on the beach in Nantucket. We were talking to Tammy King. She's the queen of the surfcasters on Nantucket, and she was leading in the classic. Her leading albie was 32.5 inches, I believe she said, and that's caught from shore and she said with seals around. She kind of explained that she had to put herself between the fish and the seals to get it in.
That's a monster albie. Did she weigh it?
Didn't weigh it. They do down there. You put it on a bump board, get the length, take a picture, and she got that photo and sent it back in. But
Oh, that's great.
over 32 inches. I mean, it's certainly more than 10 pounds. You're getting close to 15 pounds, I think.
It's got to be, I would say 15 plus. Because the Vineyard, I ask because the Vineyard has a 19-pound false albacore leading the Bass and Bluefish Derby over there. So they've seen some very big albies this year. And that is, an albie that size isn't uncommon offshore. But to have them come in close, by offshore, I mean like, edge of the canyons, out 100 feet of water, 200 feet of water. You might see some big albies like that. I know somebody got a 25-pounder off Jersey earlier this year. I think somebody caught a 25-pounder off Rhode Island. It's a new state record there. But to see one that size in the surf, that's really exciting.
Yeah, it does seem like when albies get older and get bigger, the larger ones tend to stay offshore more and not come inshore as much, except for down toward North Carolina. Which one thing, there are some studies going on right now where they're tagging albies and looking at where they travel. It does seem like it's one continuous population along the Atlantic, but we do see them kind of segregate by size. So some of the biggest ones tend to go to certain areas, certain places, stay offshore, but will pop up in places like North Carolina, close to shore, and along Florida. But for us to get them inshore like this is really cool.
So great albie year this year. Probably one of the best ones that we've heard about. Not for me personally. I've only caught 2, and one was trolling. But that's okay. I've been focusing on the surf and the bass. Going back to your striper that finally completed your slam, that was the hardest one to get, or were you not really looking for them?
No, we were specifically trying to see if we can get some stripers. The striper fishing on Nantucket, maybe a little tricky sometimes. There's only a few spots, and really there's more folks chasing the albies in the bonito than going after stripers. There's bluefish kind of everywhere. And, we fished into sunset inside the harbor, throwing topwaters where you'd really expect to at least pick up some schoolies. We had a tough time finding some stripers, so... But anyway, back to the topic of slams. Jimmy, have you ever slammed anything? Have you gotten a slam?
Yeah, I have had.
What's your proudest slam outside of Denny's?
Those have been some pretty shameful slams in Denny's.
I've distracted you now with thoughts of buttermilk pancakes.
This is the second thing I'm recording today where we're talking about breakfast sandwiches. Cheech, in the last offshore report we did, talked for 5 minutes about the barbecue truck breakfast sandwich. It's like, did they give this to you for free so you could talk about it here? He described the sauce, the consistency.
What does that have to do with offshore fishing?
Everything and nothing. I don't know. He was eating it because he was sad the trip got canceled. My proudest slam, I really only caught a couple of them, and they were all in New Jersey, Ocean City, New Jersey, fishing the inlets down there, and I was doing the Jersey version of it, which is striper, weakfish, fluke, and bluefish. And weakfish were always a tough one there. Even when I was doing it, the weak fishing was a little bit more reliable. So, it wasn't as difficult as it would be now, but you would get that weak fish, and if you had a striper too, you're like, ooh, now I just need to find the fluke. And the fluke were always there. And no matter what, especially in May, which was your best shot at getting this, you could always count on getting a big fluke in early May before the season was open. I've caught some of my largest, 25, 26-inch fluke on pink zooms, jigging them off the bridges. So that was usually the kind of what sealed it, is I would switch over to something a little bit deeper, drag the bottom, and get that fluke for to finish the slam. But that's about it. I don't think I ever have hope of getting a royal sailfish slam or a billfish slam. I don't think, or I've got a long way to go. I've only ever caught a white marlin, so.
Yeah, I guess slams are just one of those things you can kind of make up as you go along if you want to.
Yeah, you want to make a garbage fish slam, like sea robin, oyster cracker, pufferfish, sugar toads. You could. It's a fun thing to do.
Although at some point a slam just becomes a mixed bag when you got when you're counting fish species like a sugar toad and which is Jimmy's name for a puffer fish. I guess it's a lot of people's name. It's for
everyone's
a puffer
name
fish.
For a puffer fish. It's my name for my wife.
Anyway, so yeah, that's a trash slam. Oh, whoa. Not what I meant.
All right. So the guest of this week's podcast is Ben Whalley, who, this isn't a slam, but he had a very cool trip recently where he went to Canada and caught an Atlantic salmon and a striped bass on the same trip. That is a dream combo for me. I know it wasn't in the same area, but it was during the same same outing. Kevin was up there in Maine doing some kayak fishing, had a chance to sit down with Ben, who was one of the top fly tires in the game right now.
Yeah, he ties some incredible flies, and he puts them up. He does fly drops on his website where he announces that there's flies available to purchase, and they sell out in minutes because people want his flies that much. And he's also a great fly fisherman.
Also a guide.
A conservationist, and so it was a good opportunity to talk to him. He's somebody who really respects kind of the history of saltwater fly tying, relatively short history of it, and is really into kind of just keeping that passion alive, keeping it going. And it was a good conversation. I think anybody, whether you're into fly fishing and fly tying or not, you'll be into it. And if you're listening to this, I recommend watching the video because we show off some of his flies, including some really big flies that he tied, one that he tied using a skunk tail, which is fascinating.
Could you smell it?
Could not smell it.
Oh.
He said it was, I don't know, he must have washed it, shampooed it, conditioned it.
Did your dog get into a skunk recently?
My dog recently got hit by a skunk, and she still smells. We've washed 10 times and cannot get the smell out. What else should we try? I don't know. Leave it in the comments.
Maybe leave it in the comments. Shout out to Nate P.
On the Water podcast listeners, if you enjoy the podcast, you will love On the Water magazine. Go online to onthewater.com to subscribe. Use code podcast, and you can save $10 off a subscription. That's 8 issues of On the Water magazine for only $15, delivered to your house. Includes all the best fishing of the Northeast. Go ahead and subscribe today at onthewater.com. Welcome to another episode of the On the Water podcast. I'm Kevin Blinkoff, and I'm here with Captain Ben Whalley. And this is a little different this time. We're not in the podcast studio. We're actually up in Freeport, Maine, Route 1, right?
Yep, right off Route 1.
At the Muddy Rudder Bar and Restaurant.
Yep.
Having a couple beers. And yeah, while we were up here, we're going to do some kayak fishing. So we thought it'd be a good idea to call Ben and see if he wanted to chat and be on the podcast. So
yeah,
Ben, glad you could make it.
Thanks for having me.
I've been following you on Instagram for a while, mostly to look at the pictures of the flies you tie. But I've heard there's kind of an interesting backstory to how you became a full-time captain and a full-time guide up here in Maine. How did you end up where you are right now in life?
How far do we want to go back? I grew up non-traditionally in Brazil. So in Florida and then in Brazil, and moved to Maine when I was 18 back in 2003 because my grandmother retired on the mid-coast. So my initial plan was to come here and to help her through a dual hip replacement, and wouldn't you know it, I decided I should probably get an education since I hadn't gone to school. Got my GED, got into college up at UMaine, and then that kind of just cascaded. Got an internship in southern Maine, and kind of fast forward, highlight reel. Worked for a big biotech company as a scientist and then an engineer for 13 years. And during the 13 years, I was able to kind of hone my craft and build what is now my business. Mm-hmm. And then right after the beginning of COVID, I stress with work kind of hit a high, and my daughter was a couple years old, and I just realized there's more to life than being stressed out, and I don't want her to remember me that way. So with a supportive wife, I ejected and started guiding full time. So I do about 120 days a season up here, flat sight fishing. Mm-hmm. And then during the off season, I do my fly tying. So it's a pretty fun story, non-traditional.
When did fishing enter your life? Was this while you were in Brazil?
Before, so in Florida when I was really young, I caught my first fish, first memory really, Christmas Day, 3 years old. Mickey Mouse fishing rod. We went to the pier in Fort Lauderdale, and I caught a barracuda.
Awesome. That's a pretty cool first fish.
Yep, yeah. And I was hooked. And my dad is from New York and grew up, blue fishing, and I always heard stories. So it was neat when I finally did make it to New England to kind of see what he always talked about. And back in 2003, the striper fishery was actually phenomenal.
Right.
So my introduction was pretty nice. I'm like, there's some huge fish in these rivers on the mid coast here, and it hooked me. While I was in Brazil, I fished a lot. On our property, we had a big lake that had a population of pacu, which are the
kind of look like piranhas, but they eat.
Yeah, like a permit and piranha had a baby almost, and they eat berries.
Yeah.
So I started tying flies that look like berries and doing
They call
that.
them nutcracker fish. So there's the rumor that they will bite your testicles.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yep. And then all of the local creeks had wolf fish, which traíra, I think that's what they're called. There's a couple different wolf fish, but they have big teeth. They don't get huge, but fly fishing just always kind of captured me. I've always been like obsessed with nature and the outdoors since I can remember, so it was kind of fitting to really, observe. I mean, that continues to be, I think, my number one aspect or attribute to being a good guide, good fly tyer, good engineer, good scientist, is just the power of observation and I think too many people just Google an image of a bait fish, right? And it's like, I'm gonna make it look like it. And while a lot of my flies, I think, have kind of grown a reputation of being realistic and perhaps borderline art / too nice to fish, there's a purpose for everything I do in them.
Right.
And that trial and error, kind of that iterative, Kaizen approach of continuous improvement. So my favorite thing is go fishing, see something, try a fly, notice, it wasn't keeling correctly, go back, swap hooks, and and every day you see something different.
It's the scientific method in fishing.
Yep.
You're testing a hypothesis, seeing if it works.
Yeah.
The fish let you know, and then...
Except there's no controls, so that's the hard part. But yes, exactly.
And you mentioned kind of your philosophy on flies. I said I follow you on Instagram, and I've seen, your flies look beautiful, but there's a difference between, which is something you see a lot now, people seem to tie flies sometimes for Instagram. Because you can put a beautiful looking fly up.
Yep.
And I'm just barely into fly tying, just getting into it, but I've found I'll tie a fly that I would be so embarrassed to put on Instagram, but it'll actually fish really well. And the fish like it.
Yeah, and I think, so I'm very fortunate to have Bob Popovics as a mentor. And we kind of came to know each other right before COVID hit, I guess. And we've had a special kind of mentor relationship there. And it's funny because before I bought any of his books, a couple of friends got into hollow flies, right?
Yeah.
As it was kind of coming onto the scene. And the big flies I always thought were, for Jersey. We don't need them in Maine because we didn't have any pogies. We had no bunker up here because they were decimated. And then they started coming back over the years. And once I started seeing that, and then the herring runs, I'm like, they have a place here. So I started, playing around with them. But it was, you're right in that, you can spend a lot of time making a fly look pretty. It can look like dog crap in person. And unfortunately, a lot of them have never seen the water. It's like, either following a recipe or just freestyling and, you can buy a beast fly. And it's, almost every single one, you can't cast it because there's way too much material. And, I think that iterative approach and actually fishing it, seeing what works, and years and years of trial and error. But it was cool, back to my point, when Bob and I finally met, I had arrived at a lot of the same conclusions that he had over his crazy career.
Yeah.
And we think very much alike, so it was neat to finally read his books, and I'm like, holy cow, I got there too. Made me feel kind of, like, all right, I'm on the right track.
The way you describe your philosophy of Fleyes is a lot like what I've heard Bob talk about.
Yeah.
And for anyone, I'll try and give a quick history.
Yeah,
Bob Popovics is kind of would you say it's the godfather of saltwater fly tying, or?
He's one of them, yeah.
One of them.
Jersey boy, kind of born and raised.
And he really looked at fly tying. One thing he said, he looked at mimicking the bait fish, but it wasn't so much just the appearance as much as the action.
Yep.
And the other influence he had was, well, a couple of them. One of them was sort of introducing new materials to fly tying, getting into adding silicone, and which then now, I mean, a lot of guys use resin, and it all sort of
which at the time was blasphemy.
Yeah.
To purists, he was ostracized during those early years, and that he was tying lures. But the really cool thing that I hope I stay on track with is, at the end of the day, he didn't care. Like, truthfully, he was doing it for his fishery, for his purposes, and it's neat that it's been accepted so broadly now.
Right.
But it took years upon years. Like the beast fly really just recently became mainstream, and now it's everywhere.
Right.
But he's had that, and he doesn't fly tie much at all anymore. But he's satisfied. He's never tied flies for waters that he doesn't fish. So like, he's never tied flies for Florida because it's not his fishery. He doesn't know how the fish or the bait behave.
Right.
Even though a lot of his, will work anywhere. But I thought that was cool. Like, he created from the surf candy for smaller stuff to the hollow to bulkhead to, like, just spanning the gamut. Mm-hmm. He knocked off and is happy where he landed on all of those, and so he's done, and now it's time to pass on the torch, and it's cool to see a bunch of guys, and Instagram really does a I like it and I don't like it. I think the positive thing that I cherish is access worldwide to incredible tires.
Yes.
And that's it. And inspiration. I mean, that's what I started my account for on Instagram way back when, was I'm inspired by so many people posting, in Europe, and I got tying and better, and I'm like, well, if I can do the same for others, that's the goal I want to have. And, whether people want to buy them or not is, at the time I had a full-time job. I didn't have really time to tie. So it wasn't about that, but it's neat. It kind of morphed into what it is now. But
it's neat to see that. One of Bob Popovic's sort of signature moves that he developed, or styles of tying, was to take bucktail, a natural material, and reverse tie it. So I guess I'm trying to describe this for people who don't fly tie it, but if you can pull some flies out, that'll help.
Yeah.
And so normally you'd think of a bucktail hair, tying it pointing backwards along the hook, because that's sort of the shape of a bait fish. And he came up with the reverse tie, which is a way of tying bucktail backwards, doubling it back, and by that way you can create
it flares.
More. Yeah.
Yep.
So it flares. Now you've got bulk and size, or the illusion of size,
but
with
no
a lot
mass.
less material.
Yep. Yeah, so this is one of the beast flies, and this one's interesting because it's not bucktail.
Oh, really?
Skunk. But skunk actually behaves crazy similar, and the fibers tend to be so long.
Really long.
Yeah, and this one doesn't smell. But yeah, creating the hollow flying method, the reverse tying method you were talking about, he didn't create for big flies. Like, that was never the intention. The intention was, he has these bait fish. The first hollows he tied are that long.
Yeah.
And the purpose was to get a broad profile with minimal material. So by doing that, it flares, and you can control the flare by building a dam in front with very little material. I mean, this one is about as heavy as I would dress it, but even still, like, it's quarter of a pencil's
Yeah.
half a pencil worth of material wet. So when you pull it out of the water, this all compresses to nothing.
Which is another, Bob talks about taper all the time. And so this is the ultimate way to create a fish, a fly that tapers naturally the way a bait fish tapers.
Yep. Without having to control every one, because if you take
Yeah.
it from the same piece of the bucktail and just move up on
Right.
this backbone, it just automatically tapers in. Yeah, this one's bucktail, a little more along the lines of the traditional. Like that one's an 8-weight. You can cast that all day.
It's amazing. Amazing how light that is, while giving the illusion of just a.
Yeah, and in the
solid
water it
bait.
flares even more.
Yeah.
And pulses, and the more fibers was his thought. The more fibers, the more movement you have, and adding density up front here, the water pushes and creates this, turbulent effect. So anything rearward of that denser head
Yeah.
just moves. So even in not stripping it or no current, like everything just pulsates and comes alive. It's really brilliant.
It is, and this fly is just a monofilament extension off the back.
Yep.
So off the back of the hook, again, traditional fly tying, you tie to the hook.
Yep.
But now this is a way to extend the body by tying monofilament that comes off the back, and you actually have hair along that. It's almost like it's kind of like the fish spine. Like
Exactly, yeah. And it looks like that. And I'm trying to see if I brought the other method are to use, here, these metal shanks
Yeah.
that several companies have come out with, where they just interlock these metal and you tie to those. And it's actually easier if you're starting to tie on these, but you get like more of a snake-like motion.
Right.
But it's easier because these I tie in hand, so you spin the bobbin around. Takes a little more practice. These sections, each one of those half-inch sections, have like one tie-in on them, one reverse tie-in, and you just kind of link them all together to make a bigger profile.
That's awesome. Yeah, you can see where this has a little bit like more of a flexible movement
Yeah.
to it. It's gonna have more of that snake-like.
And I like fishing these personally, on the North Shore, for instance, where you're fishing rips and trying to get down. The metal definitely helps it sink quicker than just the mono. So in that instance, the action though, this one is more snake-like almost than this is more bait fish-like, I think. Like the rear moves, the head is stationary.
More of like a tail flick.
Yeah.
Right.
I end up fishing the mono. I like the mono ones personally better. I've gravitated to those more over time. But the Game Changer shanks, which they're called, because Blaine Chocolate came up with his Game Changer fly using these spines. So it's cool. Different methods and new stuff that comes out that allows us to push it further.
It's cool to see a lot of the innovation that started with Bob Popovic get passed down, and I see
Yeah.
you as one of his disciples. Gunnar Brahmer is another fly tyer in the Midwest that I follow on Instagram and watch his videos. It does a great job of
Yep.
it. There's some guys
Andre in South Africa,
guys in Europe.
Paul Monahan, Rupert, Harvey, and it's neat because, I view it as my responsibility, and I think the others as well view it as our responsibility to protect and carry on his legacy. Our fly fishing industry is so small, and if we don't keep the history straight, there's nothing stopping it from being erased. Sure, there's books and stuff, but it's so easy, and you see it all the time on social media. Someone changes, they put a feather here, and suddenly they rename it, and it's theirs, and it's weird because I personally feel like fishing in general, everything's been done, especially like fly tying. Everything's been done. It's more building upon. what has been done and finding new methods, materials, and efficiencies. How can you make it easier, quicker, stronger, more durable? But there's only so many things you can do, and rarely are there new, like, game-changing platforms, like the Game Changer, for instance, that come along that, like, really innovate, like, revolutionize it. Because I feel like you go back to Lefty's Deceiver, like, there's probably, if you go to the store down here, 10 others in a box that are Lefty's Deceivers, but tied with one different material or something, with 10 different names. So I try to be careful on that. There's no guidelines, I don't think, but.
And you tie a lot of flies in the wintertime and sell them commercially.
Do
you sell direct, or?
Yeah, so one of the ways that making this a full-time job by guiding, our season goes from mid-May to mid-October. So that leaves a big chunk of not being able to guide or bring income in. So the fly tying end of things has been really cool. I did custom orders for years on Instagram, and I just love fly tying too much. I was always 10 months backed up, always. And the stress of, like, knowing I have, a dozen of these with olive over yellow, it takes away from the fun for me. And so when I launched Ben Whalley Fishing, the company, I introduced, it's not new business model out there, but new to fly tying for sure, which is the fly drop approach. So I tie X amount every month during the off season, and you become a member on my website. It's free, but you get a notification of when it'll drop and access to my fly shop. And when it goes live, first come, first serve, you buy them. So I get to continue to innovate, focus on quality, and really tailor to people who love the flies I tie, which is awesome, and very grateful for all of them. But it's been mind-blowing at how supportive everybody is. Every drop is sold out in under 3 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. It was 5 the first one, and then it's dropped. The last couple were 1.5 minutes sold out. So it's crazy, and I know the plug world is very similar.
Right.
But I'm grateful for these people, and I get asked a lot, or are they hype? Like beast flies, are they hype? And I try to set the record straight on that front at shows and with people on social media. It's like, as with any lure or fly, they're niche. This is super niche in that, not just for stripers, for any predator fish, this will work. For stripers, they work phenomenally, and I don't think there's a real good alternative to these when they're keyed in on menhaden or herring, or are there other flies that catch fish? Yes, that people tie. I think these, for castability, durability, that's one thing I really focus on by tying less quantity, is quality.
Right.
If you're paying a premium for a fly, I want it to last, and be able to be fished for a while. And the reports have been good on that front, but it's really the time that goes into dialing them in, and proof, so I get pictures every month, even during the season, of flies catching fish from,
What are some of the coolest things that have been caught on your flies?
Striped marlin. That personally, I'm dying to go down to Mag Bay, but my buddy Joe Gugino,
yes,
he caught
Costa.
Yeah, he caught a monster on a big blue one that I tied him, and then some white ones did really well with taimen, like monster taimen, which was cool. I never really thought of them being used for them.
Yeah.
And then, what are some other cool ones? I have a folder going of all the cool pictures because it's I live vicariously through them, which is fun. A lot of tarpon, which I like. I got.
You live vicariously through where they go, but you actually just took a very cool trip.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that, where you just came back from.
So went up to Canada to explore the saltwater striper scene in the Gaspé Peninsula in Canada, in Quebec, and the Gaspé Coastal, which is a company based out of there. They've got a couple skiffs and they run trips, and they've got it so dialed in. And the flats, I mean, it's honestly the fishing was phenomenal, the sight fishing, but the biggest thing that I loved seeing was the miles of vast seagrass, untouched. Healthy habitat. Like it, mind-blowing. And they have fish from this big all the way up to 40s plus on the flats. Yeah. And you know, I truthfully did not care if I caught one of them. Like, I catch enough of them down here, but just to see what a healthy population looks like, you know, Casco Bay here, where you're going to go out tomorrow, you know, has lost over 53% of its eelgrass.
Yeah.
Which, you know, in my time out here, I've seen a considerable amount, and year over year, you know, and in large part it's due to invasive green crabs, and our warming winters. The cold winters normally knock them back so that they don't start out as a bigger population, but we've had super warm ones the last couple of years, so you know, the studies have shown the years following those, the crabs end up clipping the crap out of them. You know, and there's water quality issues and warming, you know, as with any fishery up and down the coast. But, you know, there's a lot of conservation efforts, as you know, going on in our fishery. And this trip was just a nice brief reprieve to see what we're fighting for.
Right.
You know, what it could be. And that was really cool. Like, I was just blown away by the endless eelgrass flats, and I don't know. And then they have salmon 20 minutes away, which is insane. Caught my first one. Nice 14-pound hen, chromed up.
What was that fight like?
It was insane. You know, I've caught plenty of landlocked salmon, but these things are so heavy.
Yeah.
So heavy. And it was especially cool because I had 8 of my good friends on the shore. They got to watch it hit and watch the fight and celebrate, which, how often do you have that many buddies, like, on a river watching it all play out? But so strong. Like, I was shocked with just how heavy it was. And then, you know, the jumps are insane. But yeah, the bulldogging kind of, that just shocked me. I wasn't anticipating just the sheer weight. I also caught it on a custom micro spay rod that I built. It's a custom Bob Miser blank that I built. It's a 10-foot 2.4 weight, which sounds rather light for Atlantic salmon, but it takes heavier lines too. It's kind of a weird spay thing, but it was cool to catch it on that. I don't know, the whole experience, I'm still processing everything as I just got back like 2 days ago. But very cool, very cool. Anybody that goes up there, definitely check them out, and it's a cool fishery. Yeah. Very cool fishery.
So now you're back in Maine.
Yep. Back at the grind.
And we're heading out tomorrow on Casco Bay to do some kayak fishing. I've never fished Casco Bay before.
Yep.
But obviously you've been fishing for quite a few years. Tell me a little bit about what this fishery's typically like, and then what it's been like so far this season.
Yeah. So Casco Bay is very unique, I think. There's no other place really in Maine like it in that they have the calendar islands, meaning there's an island for each day of the year. Like it's so sheltered, and it's its own little ecosystem. Like I don't have to look at swell unless I'm going out front to fish the front of the islands. And there's off of each one of the islands, there's either grass flats or mud flats or sand flats, and it's just this sandbars and channels, and so it presents a lot of great opportunities for shallow water sight fishing.
Yeah.
But then going off of kayaks, there's a ton of great water off the fronts of the islands, getting more into, the probably terrain you're more accustomed to. And historic, this season's been great in that we've seen a lot of fish. The one concerning thing for me is, we haven't had a great span of sizes, and there's been a lot of action with the emergency action to protect the 2015 year class. And the first month of the season, we saw those. They were in thick, and that was all I saw. I didn't see any of the small ones early on, and then they disappeared, and I haven't really seen that year class much. And I know Point South have, but we got inundated with heavy amounts of rain this season, which mixed things up. So fish I've found, especially on the southern part of Casco Bay, have been holding in different areas that historically, for me, they've been on flats, more gradual flats, and this year they tend to be abutting drop-offs, so still on flats, but there's always a deeper channel. Why that is exactly, I'm not entirely sure. I have to believe salinity and the fact that most of these channels are a source of ocean water coming and going. And as you'll see, our 10-foot tides are, move some water and really change what you're fishing on a, hourly basis for sure, if not smaller than that. So I think having those channels has kept the salinity more stable, and then they skirt up, feed, and go back. But it's just been different, and like I was mentioning earlier, we're the northernmost fringe of the migration. So I've noticed over the years, with the population not doing great, that it really seems dependent on where the bait ends up on the initial migration, and they move around somewhat, but the mass isn't there to have big fish up and down the coast like it once was. So now you have these pockets, and sometimes your waters are the pocket of the big mother lode, and other years, you have good fish and you'll see them come through, and in the fall you get chances at them. But it's interesting, and I think coast-wide people are seeing that. I think we just feel the impacts, amplified because we're at the very top of it.
Well, hopefully we start to see, all we can be is hopeful.
I'm optimistic. I'm an optimistic person, so I'm going to keep being optimistic. One thing I think we've seen this past year is the public has become very engaged and very in tune and knowledgeable with upkeeping and willing to speak their minds, which has been really relieving. And I think social media, as bad as I think it is on many fronts, I think it's our spot to really get people engaged and drive that voice to the people who are controlling this. They listened. Whether or not they implement the changes that we want is another story, but countless times during the hearings this past year, they're like, the public was very clear from 2,000 plus letters submitted to, their comments. So I'm optimistic. We have good people leading the charge, and good army of people pushing behind them, and
it seems like a change too among the people who are in charge, the managers, that they start to see recreational fishing as a business, as part of the economy that needs to be protected. It always sort of lost out to commercial fishing. Commercial fishing, you looked at dead fish, and that translated to dollars. And it's been, I think, an education to get them to realize there's a lot of livelihoods. There's recreational fishermen spend an insane amount of money to not keep fish.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think Florida is a great example of like, we need the. I know people are working, putting a dollar value on a fish's head. As far as what it brings to the economy is extremely complicated. I'm not even sure how you would go about doing that. But when they did that for tarpon, for instance, and permit, it's like suddenly the value of killing it is far diminished in comparison to what it actually brings to the economy in general with letting it live and survive,
Right.
And I mean, if we can get there at some point, I think that'll be just, eye-opening, hopefully, for them. But in the meantime, yeah, I think uniting, it's always been this us versus them commercial rec, and I hope that we're all in this together.
Right.
And unfortunately, everybody's contributed, even though, the recreational sector has done more damage just because of mass, right? There's more rec than commercial. But we're all in this together, so we all need to take steps, whether that's cutting back on harvests or cutting back on, or improving handling methods. We all need to take a step to saving this population. And I don't really care if you save it for me, but, the thought of like my daughter or at someday grandkids not being able to fish for the species, heartbreaking. And it's, we came close to it before, and we just have to be careful. And again, optimistic, and I think we're headed in the right direction, but we need to unite and not bicker back and forth during meetings, and because that's where the people leading the charge, making the decisions, are conflicted. They're commercial saying the community is being destroyed fully, and then the rec's like, no, we're good, and it's complicated. There's no easy fix to it, but so I feel optimistic. I feel like we have a good engaged. The ASGA has been, in my opinion, a great kind of voice and for the public, and similar to what I mentioned to you, how Peter Fallon is instrumental in kind of distilling out the valuable information and getting it to the masses the last couple of years. The ASGA is doing the exact same thing, from different posts on social media to events going up and down the coast, and I'm proud to associate with them, and I think the more people that are willing to just make their voices heard, whether or not your livelihood comes from it, matters. They are listening despite often it not seeming as so. I think this past year has shown that to be true.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
Well, let's
we're on the right track.
Let's end it on that note of optimism.
Yes.
Hopefully that
you're gonna crush it tomorrow too.
I hope so.
You're gonna have fun regardless.
I'm excited to see some good numbers of fish out there.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't have the size distribution we would like. And I'm excited to see some new habitat and what these 10-foot tides, how they affect the fishing. This is kind of new to me. So.
And it's very different from all those aspects, especially coming up from the Cape. I'm excited to hear what you think of it. I just love sharing it with people. It's infectious to see see all that Casco Bay has to offer. and there's probably tailing stripers right outside right now, which has me antsy.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. Really
Yes.
appreciate you coming out and talking with us.
Absolute pleasure.
And,
Thank you.
Next time you're down on the Cape, we'll definitely get you out fishing down there as well.
Love that. Always game.
Thank you. Awesome, man. Thank you. I really do appreciate it.